So first of all, thanks for doing this.
Yeah,
Um,
thanks for having me.
no, I'm delighted. You've obviously you've got a coffee shop like in the gym in Mayhem. So I assume is does your day largely revolve around sitting, drinking Buffalo Brew and eating Froning Farms jerky just all day, every day?
I mean, there's definitely a Brew coffee in every day for sure. I walk through there to get to any of the offices, to get to the gym. So you're presented with coffee in your face every day, which is a great thing, I think.
Yeah, that's only a recent addition as well, isn't it?
Yeah, to the gym, that's been the most recent is the Buffalo Brew coffee shop.
And is it so like I suppose from the outside looking in, if you look at Mayhem's the social media and stuff that goes out. So there's obviously the Train with Rich days, which are like, big, packed events or whatever. But then the rest of the stuff that people, I guess, are privy to is maybe four people doing something or like six people doing something or maybe one person doing something. Like, is the gym like the, say, the building segmented into, okay, here's our CrossFit affiliate where we have, classes with X amount of people coming in, whatever, and here's a slot of the day that the Mayhem teams or Mayhem athletes that live here train? Or like, is it done like that, or is it just a free for all?
It's pretty much just a free for all. So, as far as like obviously the trainers each days, those days are packed and we're at the gym and we have people who have come in from all over the world that are training and things like that. But the majority of the time, the team actually trains up at Rich's barn
Yeah,
just because it's right near, it's on his property and his kids can be there and all this stuff. It's much less chaotic. So we're not always typically at the gym, but for any podcast or any meeting, business type stuff, we'll be going to the gym. And then sometimes we're at the gym too if it's crazy cold or things like that. But the coffee shop itself is standalone as well. So some days, like you can enter through just the coffee shop and just go to the coffee shop if
okay.
you want to. You don't actually have to go through CrossFit Mayhem. So if you're just driving through and want a coffee and don't care anything about CrossFit, you could go to Buffalo Brew. I think the draw mostly is for people who care about CrossFit, but the coffee's really good. So even if you don't care about CrossFit, you just come in and get some coffee.
Yeah, is it the coffee's from Hawaii, is it?
I believe so. I don't want to. It's I think it's Mahalo Coffee
Yeah.
Roasters, but don't quote me on that because if I'm wrong, of the like.
Yeah, no, that's what I saw as well. So you're corroborating my story anyway. Something I love hearing about is guests' coffee memories. So like
Oh.
you're, I suppose, very well traveled, probably uniquely well traveled this year compared to other people. But is there like a place you were, a person you were with, or you know, a scenario you found yourself in that happened to involve coffee that springs to mind, maybe?
Well, when I think of good coffee, I definitely think of Kauai. I was actually there over Thanksgiving,
Oh, you did
and
the walk, with God, I can't remember his
with
name.
Aaron Hoff.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, yes, and Aaron, he is like one of my favorite people and everything that he's done with the Kiala Foundation. I can always just go off on like a tangent of just talking about the Kiala Foundation and how much good they do in the world. But when I go there, their coffee is so good. And typically I drink my coffee with cream. But there, for some reason, I'm like, I can drink it black. It's so good. Like, it tastes like amazing when you get quality coffee. I've definitely tried coffee in different countries that I haven't been super a fan of, but I think it's just they just do it differently, maybe.
Yeah, no, a good few people. The two places that seem to get mentioned a lot by guests is Australia and Hawaii. Hawaii really recently for some reason, like Will Morad was talking about it. Um, there's been about, I'd say, three of the last guests have mentioned it. You're the fourth, so there's
Oh.
obviously something I need to check out there. Speaking of podcasts, you mentioned them a moment ago. Like usually, I ask people if they listen to podcasts. Obviously, you've been involved with Phoning and Friends on, you know, I guess like varying different episodes. So it's not as simple as say, oh, we're going to interview this person about CrossFit or whatever, because obviously you got like faith-based episodes and stuff as well. Like, how do you find podcasting, like using podcasting as a medium?
Yeah, I love it, honestly. Podcasting has been so fun for me, and it's been really new to me in the last year because I wasn't originally on Froning and Friends. My roommate who is here, she was on Froning and Friends until she left, Kristen Miller, and Into the Storm, which is the other podcast that's faith based, started out of quarantine or out of COVID. So for owning friends they're totally different, right? So like for owning friends is super fun. We're just kind of just shooting the shit, you know, just talking about whatever, making fun of each other. We've got Ellie, who's just a riot, just always bringing something to the table, Jim and his wisdom, and then Rich just being Rich. So that's a lot of fun. And then Into the Storm is a totally different, I think, style of podcast because I study for it, like a specific book in the Bible or a scripture or whatever we're doing. I study and spend time trying to like dive into the commentary, so I'm more understanding and then try to relate that to my life, because it's not necessarily a teaching or a preaching, it's just like discussing what we've read and how it like has related to me or things like that. So I spend more time preparing for that one, and I feel like I get a lot more, like, I guess like you study people, you see those, you learn a lot more about the subject, whereas Froning and Friends is just like a totally different, it's just like a fun hour of just making fun of things that happened during the week and things like that.
Yeah, and then I suppose on the other side of it as well, you've guested on a lot of shows, like, you know, you've been on the Power Monkey one and, you know, Clydesdale and others. Like, do you enjoy being interviewed, or is it something that you maybe view as more of a responsibility or like a role that you have to fulfill?
I enjoy being interviewed. I think I just like talking to people. Like if we spend time together, we can just talk, right? Like we can get on and just talk. And I really enjoy just getting to know different people. And I find it fun too that when I've been interviewed at these specific type podcasts, everyone's so different. Like what they bring to the table or what they want to know is usually so different. And so that's fun for me to try and just be able to put into words some of the things that like people are asking what they want to know. So it's a good, like, I think it's a growing experience too. Not only do I like to talk, but it gives you some growth of like being in the camera and having to answer questions, you know, on the spot.
It's kind of forced introspection as well, I suppose, because like you say, if someone brings up something that you maybe haven't thought about in a while or that you've never thought about, you're kind of forced to, you know, like if you pose a question to someone and if they don't have time to prepare for it, you're going to get an honest answer, or else it's going to be obvious it's not an honest answer, you know, because they'll be fumbling so much. So I think that's the good thing. I think I've only ever been asked in advance for questions like once, and even then it was like, you know, be vague, like don't tell me exactly what you're going to ask me, but, you know, give me a rough idea of stuff, talking points or whatever. So I think it's cool. I think the vulnerability, I guess, that people are willing to show, to be like, yeah, grand, I'll talk about whatever, like, you know. And I think something that I try to promote, and I'm sure other podcasts are the same, is like, you know, talk freely, say whatever you want, with the comfort of editorial privileges later on to be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, will you take that out? Like, you know. I think like,
that's what's cool too. Like, I mean, like if you trust someone, or you trust, you've seen their podcast, like you've looked at their page, most people aren't out to get you, right? Like if you were to say or do something, but
But it's funny you should mention that, because I'm joking.
You're like, just wait.
Flicking through notes.
Yeah, I'm gonna crop this up.
So like social media then is, I guess, another role or responsibility that athletes are, I suppose, finding themselves. It kind of comes with the territory as, you know, maybe a bit of a poison chalice that goes with the, you know, I guess, quote, fame of being an athlete. Like, you know, it's almost like, whether you like it or not, you have to do it. It's kind of weird if you don't do it. And then there's demands, either, I suppose, intentionally or unintentionally, from fans to show certain aspects, and to, you know, like they kind of, I guess, some aggressively and some, like, you know, maybe accidentally ask, you know, questions, or pose questions that maybe they shouldn't. Like, has your experience of it largely been positive, or have you had any of those kind of moments where you're like, okay, I need to block that person, or I need to, you know, avoid this kind of thing in future?
Yeah, I think, like you said, social media has there's so many great aspects to it, and then there's so many negative aspects to it. And I mostly have a lot of great followers, people who are super kind to me and are gracious, and that's so wonderful. And I'm like so appreciative of all of them. And I, just like anyone else, you're gonna get people who are mean, who are nasty, and I've had those people too. I mean, I've definitely had people, you know, come on, comments negatively about my body or what they think I should look like and stuff like that. And when I was younger and just growing in the space, I would kind of take those things to heart and be like, wow, this sucks that this one person out of like all these other people thinks this about me. And now as I've grown and I'm like, if I see something negative that's like that's just mean, I'll just block them. I think, I'm also a person where I would love to hear your point of view. Like you don't have to believe my point of view to follow me on social media. I don't have to believe your point of view, but we can be okay. And I'm interested in other people's point of views, and like they're just differing people, and I'd love to know and learn about other things. So I don't necessarily block them if they just have a differing point than me. Like I don't think that makes sense. But if you're just gonna come on to the point of being mean, then yeah, no, we're good. You can follow. You don't have to follow me. Like that's okay. So yeah, you definitely have to you grow a thick skin though. And you probably know too from your social media if people don't like something you post. And I mean, yeah, that's the world. In today's world, I feel like a lot of times people get offended really easily and they're like really aggravated if you don't say or think the same thing as them. And that's actually a problem. We need to be okay with people having different point of views and being able to talk about that and not just be like, no, this is it. Like, this is right. This is what I believe, without being able to hear the other person. And I think that's something that we all need to work on.
Yeah, even like I was listening to Savan and Josh and Matt's podcast there the other day, and like they were kind of talking about, Josh told a story about how someone messaged him basically like cursing at him and calling him like saying he's turned into a pansy since he moved to California and all this, like, and Josh replied to the message and was like, what the hell? Like, he's like, what's your problem? And the guy was like, oh, you're my favorite CrossFitter, like, blah. And Josh was like, well, why did you start off? He's like, oh, I just wanted to get your attention. And, Josh was kind of laughing at it, but Savan was like, well, I mean, you replied to the message, so you gave him what he wanted. Like, and Matt was telling similar stories. And I guess, like, even, I suppose, most recently with Mayhem, we've seen, I suppose, the positive, the negative, and maybe the kind of murky side of CrossFit as well, where, like Matt spoke about Rich, and then like the community just, well, I suppose it's not fair to say the community, but like sections of the community just piled on. Like, I remember going on to one of Rich's posts the day after being like, I wonder, like, is it having a hangover effect? And like clicked in about 6 comments. There's only about 5 comments on it, or 10 comments on it, and 5 or 6 of the 10 were like, why are you such a dick to Matt? And it's kind of like, it's that thing of, I guess, that misplaced ownership where it's like, I'm a fan, therefore I have, a right to know what's going on or whatever. But then I guess we saw the good side of social media, where it was useful for both of them to just immediately clear it up within like 2 days, to just be like, picture, handshake, let's talk it out, put it up, done, it's over. And it's since basically been forgotten about. Like, so I think you got to see the whole circular narrative there of, the uses and the poison chalice aspect of social media in a nice little kind of nutshell.
Yeah, that's a great example for that. Just seeing, I mean, how big it got blown up to something that nobody really knew the truth. Nobody knew the truth about the two of them besides the two of them, the two people that were interacting. So you got the two of them, and everyone else thinks they know what's going on, and then it just becomes, it was chaos. Just the chaos of social media is so funny, and that's truly where I see the negative sides of it. But then, they made up, and it was like this beautiful thing of everyone's like, oh, this is great.
Yeah, so, they both shook hands and broke each other's fingers.
It just totally cracks me up. Just even the social, like looking from the social media side of it, of like, people just hating, and then they see one thing, they're like, oh, okay, like, was it worth it to go through all that hate?
Yeah, I kind of wonder as well, would the same thing have happened, say if this was like 2018, would the same thing have, like, if there was more going on, like basically everyone's kind of clutching at straws for like CrossFit content to be like, we've no competitions to talk about, we might as well talk about this. I was curious as well, like, do you feel pressure, say, being around Mayhem, like the culture of it and the building and the people and stuff? Because obviously, like, say, Rory's there now, and there's more of a laser focus on media output, and there's either in-house media being done, or I know it's a popular place for people to go and get content and go and make content out of what's happening and stuff. Like, it's such a hallowed ground for the sport. Like, are you ever going to train thinking like, oh god, like there's going to be someone here now with a camera and I'm really not feeling it today?
That's so funny. So I've kind of like, since I've been here for 3.5 years, I've grown with as the media's grown too. Like they already had a media team and were doing all that stuff before I got here, but not to the capacity that they're doing now. So I was exposed to it like at the end of 2017, and I really didn't like being on the camera. It was not normal for my life because I had come from a place where I was never on camera. All of a sudden, people are filming me like all the time, and I didn't really like it. And now it's just kind of the norm. I mean, especially for Rich, he's on camera all the time. And since quarantine, we've done these live streams on YouTube that are literally Monday through Friday. So I'm just on camera, and it's okay with, like, I'm okay with it. I'm a pretty transparent person as it is anyways. I mean, some days like I don't want to do my hair and I just don't. And I'm like, okay, well, it's hopefully like Ben doesn't come in to film a Mayhem Monday because this is what it is. But also I'm like, I can't worry about that. I just got to show up. So it's kind of just the norm, to be honest. I don't feel any pressure. I know too that it's like a super safe environment. Like everyone that's working at Mayhem, like you said, like if I for some reason looked or did something dumb that I didn't want on camera, it could easily be cut out. But luckily I haven't come across that. They usually love those dumb things. They're like, this is what's going to make the videos. So yeah, no, it's a really unique environment, and I think I'm just used to it, but it's also, on the other hand, probably not normal, like what someone would think would be normal.
Yeah, like I guess like shooting it way back then, like when you were growing up, you were heavily involved in gymnastics and all the way up through college, which is kind of rare in the sport. Like usually people tend to drop off around like, 9 or 12 or 15, they tend to drop off. Like a lot of guests I've spoken to who've done gymnastics have spoken about the kind of, the strong demands it puts on you, like mentally as well as physically, like, and then that there's nearly that kind of military routine. It's kind of similar to swimming in that way, I guess, that you have to train, like, and you can't not do it. Is that something that you think in hindsight that you thrived in that environment of like the kind of the rigors of it, I guess?
Yeah, totally. I think I've been kind of like I say a striver since I was like a young girl. And I think part of it was involved in just like the sport, like being in gymnastics, because it is so just like, that's all I wanted to do. And I actually like did half days at school to train. Like I like thought about homeschool. I was like super into it, wanted to go to the Olympics, and that didn't come to pass, but like still the training of all of it every day. I loved it, and I was super passionate about it, and it not forced, but it grew in me a very competitiveness, and then also on that like hardworking, discipline, a striver, which can be a great thing, but also there's like a negative side to that too, which I'm growing and working on. But I think what's cool is that what led me, like I sometimes look back and think that gymnastics was kind of like a stepping stone to CrossFit, because that's what like was in my destiny, but I didn't really know it at the time. I just wanted to be great at gymnastics, and I was never great. I was just pretty good. And then to see all these really cool doors open through CrossFit, and then just getting to come to Mayhem and being on Rich's team, it's a really cool thing for me to look back and be like, oh, gymnastics was super important in its time and its place, so that it got me here.
Like when it happened, when it I guess became apparent that it wasn't going to happen originally, like was that a difficult like reality to accept at the time, or were you kind of quick to move on?
Yeah. So what happened was when I was 17, I actually had knee surgery, and that was like kind of when I was at like my peak of my gymnastics. I definitely wasn't going to make it to the Olympics by any means, and I knew that that pretty soon, like maybe like 13, 14, like, okay, I'm not going to make it to the Olympics, but I still wanted to compete at that elite level, and that was not going to happen. And then the bigger issue was when I had knee surgery at 17, I was literally in the middle of recruiting. And I remember actually one of the recruiters from college was there when it happened, and I injured myself. And just the reality of, okay, I need a scholarship to go to college. And that was like the big thing. Like, okay, I've got to figure out someone who's gonna give me a scholarship to college when I'm like my knee's all messed up. I've got this going on. And gratefully, it's like so crazy how everything works. I ended up at the University of New Hampshire, and I totally loved it there. And it was not my top choice originally. Like that's not where I had planned to go. Given I was born and raised in Arizona, I didn't even know where New Hampshire was on the map. I just knew it was like really far away, and it ended up being awesome, and I loved it there. So yeah, it definitely. I can't even remember your question exactly, but I'm talking in a circle.
No, that's good. That's good. I think you've gotten there in a roundabout way. Like when you started CrossFit then back in like 2013 or that, like you were working, two jobs. So some people are like, oh, I was working full time when I started, but you were working full time like twice. Was there a point in when you were training or when you were, like kind of getting used to it and stuff that you thought like, okay, I could be in a position in a while here to quit what I'm doing and like replace those sources of income through something that I enjoy doing?
Yeah, it is actually funny because when I originally started CrossFit, I had no plans to compete. It really, that is not why I started. I was kind of like done with the competitive scene of my life, I felt, after gymnastics. And I just didn't really know how to stay in shape, how to work out, because someone had always told me what to do as far as fitness goes. And I started just doing CrossFit like a class when I could, because I was working a ton at the time. And through a year of just doing a class, the next year of the Open, I ended up coming in 64th in the Northeast at the time. And that's when they took top 45. So I was like, wow, I'm not far off, and I've just been kind of doing classes, and I mean, maybe I could do this. I didn't think of it as like something lucrative, just kind of like as far as financially, but more of, man, it would just be really fun to compete because I'm competitive. And that's when I was like, I think I'm going to start training a little bit harder. And I started taking the training more seriously. And then I was able to qualify for regionals in 2015. So that's kind of where it grew. And from there, then I was like, okay, maybe I should become a CrossFit coach so I can train more. And then just continued down that road.
And then like you mentioned regionals there, so you've like, your first time there, you finished up 12th, and then the next year you followed up with a fifth place finish and like a trip to the games and 15th. Like at the first regionals, I heard you speak about your start and how you struggled. The first couple of events were just a shit show, basically. Like they just, your
Yeah.
nerves kind of got the better of you. Like, and then you were kind of facing into, I guess, what you would have considered like an event where you needed to just control the damage and, bail out the boat until you got through it. But you ended up finishing second in that and then continued to climb steadily to get your qualification. Like I've heard you talk about your faith in the past, I guess, and like your kind of, I suppose, a belief in like an overarching plan and stuff, and how, it mightn't be clear. Like, has that been important to you in those kind of moments? Like, is it something that you think about in the middle of a workout, or just after a bad workout, or just before a workout, or like, is your competitive spirit and your, I guess, your religious beliefs like kind of separate most of the time and only intersect sporadically, or is it something that are totally intrinsically linked in your mind?
I would say totally intrinsically linked in my mind, for sure. And I think it's kind of, it gives you like a freedom, something I try to explain to people in competing. For me personally, is being able to have my identity outside of CrossFit is super important, because CrossFit could be taken away from me in a second. Like I literally could be out there and trip and, break my hand, and then I can't compete. And so if my identity and all my worth and everything I put on is in CrossFit, then that can be gone. And that's really scary. And what's really cool is, like, for me, my faith is a huge part of my life. But I was able to, especially like I talk about the 2019 season with freedom, being able to truly live and compete in freedom of like, I'm so excited to be here. I love competing. I've worked really hard. I can go out without this. There's always pressure, but it's a different pressure of like, if I go out and totally bomb, I'm still me. I'm still like who I claim to be. I still have a lot of great qualities. Like competing CrossFit is not what makes me an amazing person or this or that. So you can compete in this freedom of like, not this overarching stress of, if I don't win, then I'm nothing. Like then everything wasn't worth it. And then this and that. And I think that's the biggest part of like, especially if we flash back to 2016, I had gone in and it was crazy. Like there's so many God things of that whole regionals for me, but like the workouts and everything, how they lined up, and then just kind of blowing it in the middle of it. Like in these two workouts, I have these two crazy finishes. And I remember just seeing a verse in between those workouts, because I was kind of like, everyone was like, oh, they just blew it, well, this sucks. And it was James 1. It was like, consider it pure joy.
Surely that's perceived on your part. I doubt anyone went up and was like, oh.
That's fair. But like to me, I was like, I had this moment of like, wow, that's like, you can't come back from, I think it was like I don't remember, but mid-20s, it was like 24th and 22nd or something. And that was kind of unseen of people kind of coming back in regionals, because it was hard, these super regionals, to be top 5. And I've seen a verse from James, I consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds. Like, this is what's creating endurance in these things in you. And that's not it verbatim, obviously, but I was like super encouraged by that. And then just little things kept happening, and I was able to just take the pressure off and like, all right, let's just go compete, because I love competing. This is what I'm, God has gifted me to do. And it ended up working out. It was like that's one of my favorite memories of CrossFit, is qualifying in 2016, just because of how it happened. And I mean, I don't know if it would have felt the same if I had gone, if I was going to the final event with this giant, it was like a cushion, and like knowing I was going to make it, whereas like kind of this bubble thing battle. So I wonder if it would be different.
Yeah, I guess it's more of a Hollywood ending, I guess, isn't it? It's more like, yeah, it's, the underdog. Everyone roots to the underdog. So you finished 15th that year, which is nothing to be sniffed at in your rookie year. And then I guess the year after, an athlete's rookie appearance can sort of have that difficult second album syndrome, where it's, like, God, was that a fluke? Or, how do I replicate that? Or what if I can't replicate it? And you basically had all of your career injuries in the same like year.
Yes.
And you were sick during the open and stuff. Like, is it from there that kind of resilience that you have now of separating yourself from your, I suppose, athletic prowess has come from? Because obviously all of those things are totally out of your control, but even the most strong-willed of people can, or the people with the strongest faith can feel a bit of a dip there, when it's like, oh, come on, like, surely not another thing on top of all the other stuff.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was definitely a dip for me in that season. And just because you have, a strong faith or strong will doesn't mean that you're not going to experience those struggles and those sadness and things like that. And it was really hard, because I felt super lost. I'd had such a great 2016. And then it was like I had so many injuries. It was kind of like crazy. And then got sick during the open. It's just like, it felt like one thing after another. And sometimes when you're in a season like that, you can't really see the light. And I definitely wasn't seeing much light there. There was so much going on that was just not good. But in looking back, like, that's what kind of led me to come here. And I think originally when they had asked me to be on Mayhem Freedom, my thought in my head was like I knew it was a killer opportunity that was super awesome, but I was like, I think I should compete. Like, should I compete individual still? Because I had lost my 2017 season in my head. Like, I didn't have that opportunity, and that was definitely not God's plan for my life. It was to come here and be team. But I'd never competed on a team really in my life. Even gymnastics is very individual sport. Even if you're on a team, you still are doing things on your own. But
Do you know why they asked you? Like, did they ever say, oh, the reason we reached out to you was because of this? Or was it just like, were you just like, I don't care, I'm here?
Yeah, no, they did. So they had gone through 2016 roster of the game, and whoever they had like gone through some people and asked them, and I was just one person that they're like, oh, who's this girl? And they kind of vetted people based on like social media, like, do they seem like they're nice? And then they brought me in. And they liked me enough to keep me around. And obviously you had to be fit enough and all these things. So I'm like, so that's one of the coolest. Me getting to Mayhem is so cool. I was like, I can't believe I was the girl, because at that time I remember they had done this post that was like, oh, who's gonna be the new girl? Be like, let us know if you want to be the new girl. And I'm like, are they gonna, like, they asked me to come here? Like, what? This is crazy. So yeah, it's really cool.
Was it difficult in the beginning? Because obviously, like, there's pressure, there's normal pressure with competing anyway. There's a pressure to perform. And if you're joining a team, especially when you've not done team, you got this kind of pressure to, prove yourself. You don't want to be the last one to finish something or the first one to drop or whatever. And then when it's that team as well, it adds an extra element. Like, but you've also lost, I guess, the support of the familiar, like, because you've moved and you've like uprooted yourself and moved. So you've lost like stuff around you that's usually around you as that kind of support network. And then I guess with the team that it was, and its members have trained together, competed together, and they've succeeded together as well, which I suppose makes it like extra difficult to kind of step into. Like, what are your memories of those first, say, like couple of months when you were there?
Oh, it was hard. It was super hard. And not because anyone wasn't great and wonderful. Everyone was super kind and they welcomed me in right away. But just like you said, the self inflicted pressure of one, two, I was coming in not fully recovered from my injuries. I was still rehabbing a torn labrum and I still had a stress fracture in my foot. So they kind of took me on with this hope that I was going to be okay. And like, that was definitely a fear in the back of my mind. But yeah, coming into an environment where it was super competitive, like as far as there are two teams at that time in 2018. So we had 4 women total, and then we had 4 men. So it was like, you're never wanting to come in last in a workout, and not just among your 4, but among the other 4 of the other teams. So there was definitely a ton of pressure that was induced by myself that made it really difficult and made the transition hard. And like you said, just living in a new environment where like everyone's like your friends, but they don't know you yet. So like there's this level of like you don't have that like intimacy of like a true like, oh, I've known you for 6 months and like I can help you. I understand what you're going through. So it was really hard. And we laugh about it now for sure. It's like you kind of have to go through the fire sometimes to get to where you need to be. And I think like part of that was like a little bit of like a refining fire of like having to show up every day with crazy pressure, even like though it was self-inflicted, but this crazy pressure to perform is what made me get to the point like of as fit as I was to be able to do that. So
Yeah, and then I suppose like you're in it maybe a uniquely empathetic position then in 2019 when China and Dre joined the team. Like, like did you feel an onus of responsibility there to be like, it's okay, guys, I've done this. Like, I'll come with me. I'll take you under my wing.
yeah, it's so funny because China and I, we talked about it a lot, mostly because like we both competed individual, and the pressure competing individual is very different than competing on team. In my personal experience, have found that teams way worse when it comes to pressure because you, as an individual, you're just gonna let yourself down, which sucks. But like if you have 3 other people on the field that if you mess up, you're letting them down as well. Like that's a different kind of pressure that, and this is just my personal opinion, that is it's hard. It weighs on you. And I think China, we talked about it going to, she's like, okay, I didn't understand it until we got here. And then there's also this pressure of the expectation to win. We're not going to the games or to these competitions anytime just to have fun. It's like, as Mayhem Freedom, you're going to win. So recognizing that pressure too is a little bit different. So yeah, we laugh about it now. And Dre is just like, he's a freak. I don't even know. He did so amazing. We have the joke because we like pretend like we hate each other, but I'm amazed that he handled the pressure as well as he did because he just came in, won a gold medal, peace out.
Yeah, and like you mentioned there about the team goes to win, and like that's the the overt aim that is, it's not hidden. Like, was there a weird atmosphere, I suppose, in hindsight looking back now, that first year, because obviously they hadn't won the year before, so when you arrived, was there kind of an extra kind of element of weirdness around the place?
I think maybe so. At the time, Rich had his silver medal hanging in the barn every day from the team. So like that was just like a reminder of like the second place in 2017. And for me, it was just like, okay, I'm the new girl if I come in, and they're switching from 6 to 4, and I'm like, it's kind of gonna look like it's my fault if something happens, but having to like let that go and just work really hard. And it was great having, I think the 2 teams in 2018 was a huge benefit because there was always a competitive, we weren't just competing against, like I said, our team. We had this other team that was very fit. They came in 4th at the CrossFit Games. So they weren't a joke. Like they were very incredibly fit. So the constant battle with that team really helped us, I think, like grow in that year.
Yeah, and then I suppose this year you had Scott Panchik step in, so like certainly not a weak link, taking up a role in the team. You guys like did incredibly well in London, and you were looking hungry, and then it's just gone. Like, was it difficult, say, when the initial announcements about the season were coming out? Was it hard being a team competitor, knowing like that the first to the chopping block was a team competition?
Yeah, I was super heartbroken, honestly, from a standpoint of I just love competing, but I also felt like Wadapalooza 2020, that was our last competition. And I had seen for me in my own personal career, like to be the fittest I'd ever been, and I'd started closing holes like as far as swimming that I had always struggled with and running. And so I was pumped about 2020, and obviously being with Rich in China again, and then Scott was an easy addition to the team as far as not only fitness but his personality is just super wonderful. Um, so yeah, I was all into 2020, super excited. I remember we were supposed to leave for West Coast Classic like maybe in a few days when we got the announcement of the shutdown, and that West Coast Classic was going to be postponed, and then it's just a spiral effect. Um, I totally understand, like CrossFit had to do what they had to do, and I totally get that. And I think it was just a hard year for everyone as far as COVID, but also for me, like in retrospect, me losing my CrossFit season is not really a big deal. Like it's really champagne problems when it comes to what people are really facing during COVID and things like that. So I just used it as a lens. Like, yeah, it was initially, it hurt, but then like a perspective of that's like, if that's like what's hard for you in this season, you're lucky, you
Yeah.
know? So to be able to look at it through a different perspective and see that it's really not a big deal was good for me.
Yeah, obviously then there was a nice little buzz around Mayhem like afterwards when Haley qualified for the games, and like, you know, she's like from the outside looking in, I'm sure it's echoed on the inside looking at her, but like she's just incredible. Like I was in awe, I suppose, both stages of her, particularly her and Justin. So like Tia and Matt obviously incredible, and it was incredible to, I suppose, you know, be inside one of those moments where you're going to be asked like, where were you when? And it's like, oh, I was watching, I saw when that happened. But then I guess like the nice little, I guess, side salad of Justin and Haley's like attitude and grit, like for two people that are so young, is just astonishing to watch. And like I know Justin has been to Mayhem recently, and I just was curious, I suppose, what's it like for you as an athlete and a coach, like helping Haley and being by her side, and then watching, I suppose, the potential of those two, like for a future in the sport.
Oh my gosh, it's been so incredible. And Haley, we talk about it all the time because the 2019 training season before she went to play six, she actually was China for us, like at home, because Dre and Rich are always paired together, and Haley and I are always paired together. So we push each other so much in 2019, and I think that's why a lot of us, like not only us two together, but we are always trying to beat the boys because we do these workouts where we're like, we got to take down Rich and Dre, and we took them down a lot. I'm saying it on this podcast. So it was just a lot of fun just pushing each other. And then the next season too, we did the same thing, just training together. And so to kind of witness her growth has been exciting for me because I saw her when she came into Mayhem. She originally came into Mayhem to be on Mayhem Independence. And then that didn't happen, and she chose to go individual, which to then come in sixth at the games, like holy moly, that is so cool. And her continued growth in fitness, and not just fitness, but she's so young. She just turned 20 in December, and like her maturity is far above what mine was at 20, and like what most 20-year-olds are. And to see how she holds herself so composed and so disciplined and works so hard, like most of the time Rich and I are trying to hold her back in a sense of like, okay, we don't need to do like 100 workouts today. We can just do 80 and be okay with that. But she's got that fire, and like you can't teach that. You can't make somebody have that. You just have it or you don't. And to see what happened this season, man, it was so cool. Like stage 1 to be there and witness her, and then to go with her to stage 2. And like you said, Justin too, it's like this composure that they have being so young. And also I think kind of like this fearlessness of being so young. Like they're not even worried. They're just going out like, I'm just going to go and compete. And Haley faced so much at the games this year, and she still came out like just totally incredible. So yeah, it's been awesome to watch and be a small part of it.
Yeah, like I've heard you before, like say how self-sufficient she is, I guess, and how mature and knowledgeable, and like I've heard you downplay your role at the games, and like, you know, I'm assuming a bit of modesty there. Like I'm sure you weren't just like, you know, clapping when she finished and nothing else. Like, but like, was it weird being surrounded by, say, like say Justin Kotler and Shane Orr and Ben and Adam and all these like lofty coaches with tons of experience and stuff. But like, did you feel like, you know, weird about being around them, or is it even noticeable when there's so much going on anyway?
I think partly it wasn't super noticeable, but also like I hold them in high regard. Like I have a lot of respect for what they've done, their careers, and these athletes that they've truly programmed for individually and built. And like I said about Haley, and I say like I traditionally am not her coach. I really am her training partner and her friend. And Rich does the programming for Mayhem, so I'm not like working the same position as Justin or Shane. From a sense of like that is literally their full-time job, and they, you know, have been doing it for years, and I totally respect that. So it was cool for me to just be there from like a standpoint of I also knew what Haley needed, which is different than maybe what they would give their athletes, right? So I knew her well enough to know what she needed from me, and then to kind of learn and just see like how, because everyone's different, everyone's got a different style, and see like how they did this thing. And it was like a super intimate environment, whereas normal coaching scenarios at the CrossFit Games, there's so many people, right, that I'm not even gonna see what Ben's doing or what Shane's doing, but in this environment they're like 2 feet away from me and I can hear everything they're saying. So it was like a really cool experience from both sides. I definitely didn't feel like I shouldn't be there in any means, because I knew from what Haley needed that was the right person there, but also too to see that what they've built and what they've done is really cool to witness.
Yeah. Um, I guess since the games then, most recently, you've announced that you're taking a break from the competitive season, to focus on health issues, I guess. And, you know, I suppose I go back to your faith again. Like, is that something that makes a decision like that more palatable or easier to stomach when you have to make it?
Yes and no. It's been a really difficult decision, truly. And I think it doesn't make it easier, but then when you step through into like knowing what you should do, you have God, you know, like to rely on, like, and in faith, I know that God's got a plan for my life, whether I'm out competing on the floor or I'm not. And one thing that's cool has been able to just like separate. Like I haven't had a season where I wasn't planning to compete or trained to compete since I was, I think, 5. So it's more of like this grand unknown of like just this year being different than what my life looked like as far as a performance standpoint from a physical aspect. So I say the decision's really hard, but then I have my faith in this cushion of just knowing that the plan is for good, and that although it may look like not ideal, like some people would be like, wow, that sucks, you're not competing. I'm like, yeah, but I feel like something really great is gonna come out of this year, and by feel, I know it's going to. And I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I mean, getting 100% healthy to compete is one thing, right? That I know that will come from that tangibly. And then I'm sure there's going to be other really cool things. There's so much opportunity at Mayhem. And so I love my job here and what I do here too. So to be able to pour more time into that is cool.
Yeah. And then I suppose, like, obviously you mentioned your identity there about, you know, like separating it and stuff, but I suppose a big part of who you are is mayhem and freedom and a competitor. Like, was it difficult, say, yesterday and last night, watching the buzz and the excitement of announcing the new lineup from the outside this time?
Yeah, it was definitely hard, but not because I don't think everyone's wonderful and I'm really excited for the team. Just hard knowing I'm not going to be out on the field, like helping the team to a gold medal. For sure, that was difficult. But then there's also this clarity that I have knowing that I'm making the right decision. So it's like, I'm like, oh, that stinks for a second, but then, okay, let's just cheer them on and see how they're going to do. And the team's going to be awesome, super fit. I'm pumped to watch them. I've competed against Andrea and Taylor since I've been on team. And then Chase I've known since I've been here too. And obviously Rich, been on team with him. So I'm really excited to see what comes from it.
And then I suppose, like, immediately when I knew I was talking to you and then saw that announcement yesterday, the first thing that came into my head was, like, I suppose is a common thing that no matter what you do or what one does, there's like FOMO is something that affects people, like that kind of fear of missing out. And, like, you know, sometimes a bit extreme where, like, you know, maybe if someone's training every day and they think, oh shit, what if I miss a day? Like, what if I lose some of my fitness? Or, you know, if you're doing, I don't know, like podcasts or vlogs or something, you're like, oh, what if I miss a release and people don't come back? Or,
Mm.
you know, is that something that you've had to grapple with when you're making the decision as well of like, shit, if I step aside here, like what if there isn't room like to step back in again?
Yeah, totally. That is definitely something that's crossed my mind, but I just comes back to just knowing that I'm making the right decision. And since I know that, I just have to have faith that if it's God's plan for me to get back on the team, I will.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then something other door will open. And so it's kind of like you can feel it for a second, but you can't dwell there. You can't live in the future of like this like might happen situation. You can feel it for a second and then, okay, let's come back to the present and just work on what I'm doing now. And then the right doors will open, and like they always have. So
Yeah.
you got to just step through those doors when they're there. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And it's kind of funny because this podcast, I didn't know it was going to land on this day compared to like what was happening yesterday. And I thought about it earlier in the week, and I'm like, oh, I know they're announcing it. I'm like, and then I have coffee pots and wads, and I'm like, are you gonna be ready to talk? And I was like, oh yeah, you can be fine.
Yeah. You mentioned there stepping through a door. This year also saw you like literally step through a door, you know, a few thousand feet up in the air. So you did skydiving, and like I also have a fear of heights. So like how the hell did you do that? Because I think I remember I went bungee jumping with my wife. We were dating at the time, and I we went bungee jumping, and I was like, you know, when you're seeing someone first and you try to act all like, you know, oh, yeah, it's fine, I don't mind, whatever. So I got up, and it was in like a forest, and I got up to the top, and Orla, my wife, did it just straight away. And I was just like, oh, okay, that's fine. And then I walked up to the edge, your man hooked me in, and he, like, I was kind of standing on the edge, and I was like, oh, I'm not doing this. And he was like, oh, it's fine, it's fine. And he was like, do you want me to help you? And I was like, what does help mean? And he was like, oh, I'll grab like like, you know, essentially give you a wedgie on the harness, and you just like lean forward, and then he'd like let go, and I just fall. And I was like, yeah, yeah, okay. So then like step forward, and he was like, yeah, you're going to need to step forward. And I was like, yeah, yeah. And he's like, no, but you actually need to you need to move like your feet to stand at the edge. I was like, yeah, I am. Yeah. And he's like, no, you're still about 1.5 meters away from the edge, you have to walk forwards. So I'd say I was up there all in probably about 40 minutes of like, he had me over the edge, and I was like, no, 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 no. And like, I think there's a legal thing where they can't,
Oh.
even if they know that you're going to enjoy it, they can't like just be like, oh look, just go. Like you have to like consent, so that you can't sue later and be like, oh, I didn't want to do it or whatever. So at the end of it, then he was like, he goes, well, you know, I'll count down from 10. And I was like, right, okay. I swear he must count down about 1,500 times from 10. He's like, you know, 2, 10, like over and over again. So like at the end, then he said, and I'll never forget the words. He was like, whatever you do, just make sure that you don't just step out. Because he was like, if you're this way and you step out, you'll go feet first, and then when you reach the end of the cord, you'll whip, like, you know, you'll like
Yeah.
whip down or whatever. So he was like, just, I don't care what you do, just make sure that you go head first, like don't go feet first. So I was like, right, okay. And then he was like, you know, counting down from 10 for like the 1,400th time. And then he counted down from 10. And as I naturally enough stepped out, because I'm an idiot, I heard him say, oh fuck, when I stepped out. And then, but so the last thing I heard when I stepped out was, oh fuck. And I was like, oh shit, is there something wrong? Like I had forgotten that I had stepped. I was like, there's something wrong. So I went down, and there was like a Velcro wrap around my ankles, and then another harness around my waist, and the Velcro wrap around my ankles. I heard like a noise of Velcro, and I felt my feet slip. But what actually happened was my shoe came off when I was in. So nothing happened with the strap, but my shoe came off, and it like, I freaked. I genuinely was like, I'm dead. Like I'm gonna hit that tree that's over there. Like my feet are after coming out. And my wife still has a video, and all you can hear is me like screaming at the top of my lungs, my shoe, because my shoe would come off. But I was never so relieved. I remember looking up and just seeing my shoe hanging down, thinking like, oh, my feet are still in it. I'm alive. Like
Yeah.
fine. But yeah, I like what immediately when I saw the vlog, the mayhem vlog, and you talk about like on your social media and stuff about doing it, that story popped straight into my head. But like that is nothing compared to like you're putting your trust in, I guess. Okay, you can't even see the ground really. So the, you know, that's worse. You're also putting your trust in another human and in like I had a cable attached, so the likelihood of the cable breaking is so slim compared to like, like parachutes don't open sometimes. So,
Yeah, for sure.
like, was
Yeah,
that was that like a did you really have to build yourself up to? Because I know you said like, oh, I wasn't going to do it. I was there and I was like, no, I'm not doing it. Like, was it the kind of peer pressure element of it, or was it like I might not have this opportunity again kind of thing?
it was both for sure. So like our team had gone skydiving a few months earlier, and I was straight up, no, I'm not doing this. I'm like, I don't have a desire to jump out of a plane. Like, I'm scared of heights. Why would I go up in a plane and throw myself out of it? And then when the Army Warrior Fitness thing presented jumping with the Golden Knights, I looked at the Golden Knights. I'm like, okay, these people are legit. Like, I knew that was a once in a lifetime opportunity to jump with them. So I had that like over here. And then everyone was like, no way, Tasia's going to do it. Like, Tasia, they were taking
The
bets
classic
when I was,
competitive element.
yeah, they were taking bets on me in the plane if I was going to get out or if I was going to ride it back down. So then there was like, okay, like, screw you guys. Like, I'm way tougher than you think I am. And I was like sick. Like, I talked about it on the vlog, but I remember in my brain, like, I was trying to think about something. Like, I was trying to like pray. I was trying to think positive things, but I couldn't even think straight. It was just like ding, 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 ding. And I actually had a mini, like, I wouldn't say a panic attack, but so they have this clear door on the side of the plane. So you can see as you're going up, like, that you're getting really high. And I was sitting right by the door because I was going to be first one out. Haley was in the plane with me too, and she was going to be second out. And I like get all strapped in. I'm strapped to my guy who was Ace. He was great. He's the fastest man in the Army, which is pretty crazy. And so I'm like sitting there and we're getting up to 13,000 feet. And I know what's happening. I'm like, like, I'm like full on like heavy wheezing. And they're filming me. They're like, this looks bad. And Ace is like, hey, take a second. I want you to lay back on me. So there's this one picture, I haven't shared it, but I'm like, he had me lay back on him because I was sitting on top of him and took me through breathing exercises. No joke. He takes me through breathing exercises, and then I'm like laying my head on his shoulder, and he goes, okay. They'd open the door while I was laying down, and they go, okay, stand up and walk towards the door. And I had my hand tucked in. I was just like, all right, there we go. And being in the door, like, I think for you almost had it harder, I would think, because you have to get yourself out. Like, once I knew once I was in the door, I was going out of the plane. Like, I wasn't coming back in the plane. And so all I had to do was just hold on to my hands like this and let Ace put me out of the plane, which I think is easier than, like, if I was standing like you on the edge by myself, I don't think I would have gone.
For the majority of it, I wasn't standing by the edge. Just do you like when you're on the way down? Do you breathe? Like, you can't breathe surely for a good like until the parachute opens, I assume, can you?
Well, so for me, it's funny because I thought the free fall was going to be the scarier part, where I think the free fall was less scary than what you'd expect because the ground's so far away. So like, you're just like, it's this weird feeling of like, you don't know what's happening. Like, I'm falling, but you don't really feel like you're going 100 and whatever miles. You don't feel like that. You're just like, okay. And you're not scared because the ground's not coming at you at lightning speed. Even though it is, it doesn't look like it. So that part was not that scary. I mean, it wasn't like, I wasn't thrilled. But once the parachute opened, I'm like, okay, parachute's open. The day we jumped happened to be really windy. It was safe for like their regulations. But for me in my head, I'm like thinking about, this is when it got scary for me because the ground's getting closer. Like, we're coming closer. I can see, okay, if the parachute gets collapsed to here, I'm definitely not going to make it. Like, this will be the end. And I can hear the wind like, and Ace, he's so funny because for me, like, I like to talk. And I was trying to talk to him and I was like asking about his family, and we got to the ground. He's like, I've never had someone ask me about my family before, like all his daughter's names. I'm like, just please talk to me. I'm so afraid, because I was so afraid under canopy, honestly. And I landed on the ground and was like, all right, I'm never doing that again, which everyone's like, what? Most people are like, oh my God, it's so fun. I was like, no, that was like horrific. I'm good.
I'm glad you clarified that the questioning element of your journey came when the parachute was open. I was imagining you like hurtling at 100 miles an hour, being like, "Tell me about your wife and kids."
Yeah, tell me, I'd like to hear. Which even under there, he could barely hear me. I'm like, "What are your kids' names?" It was like, one of them's Mercedes. I remember.
He's trying to like steer the parachute down.
He didn't even offer like everyone else was like, hey, do you want to do the things? I was like, heck no. Keep your hands on the poles.
Well, look, we finished with a quick fire.
Okay.
So they're either or. So snatch or clean,
Snatch.
deadlift or squat,
Squat.
gymnastics or cardio.
Gymnastics.
I thought so. Bike or row,
Bike.
coach or compete,
Compete.
team or individual.
Team.
Cool. Okay. Well, listen, thanks a million. I suppose first of all, best of luck with your recovery and everything that you have planned this year. I know you've got some maybe more personal fitness goals this year, so I look forward to seeing how you do with those. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you back in 2022.
There you go. Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time. Seriously.